Wednesday. So it's Happy Hump Day. Sometimes these Wednesdays seem to come around way too quickly. You know, one of the most powerful human needs that we all have is the need to be seen, the need to be heard, the need to feel valued. We all want that at times in our life. In fact, at many times in our life. And if you think about it, this is something that marketers try to tap into all the time, because often when they'll make an offer, they'll try and personalize the offer. So it feels as though that it's meant for you. You feel special in some way. With facial recognition software, they're doing that now. It's interesting if you look at some of the places overseas, 7-Eleven stores in Thailand are actually using facial recognition software to be able to identify regular customers and then be able to make product suggestions. Now, I'm not quite sure whether I like the idea of facial recognition software in shops. But the point is, the intent of all of these efforts is to show the customer that the organization knows them and that understands them. It's an interesting concept, but if you think about it, it doesn't take away that need for human interaction. We all want human interaction because we're hardwired for connection. And when we take away that human interaction, when we take away the time to notice, to show care and concern for others, it just doesn't quite feel the same. So it's really important to always think about, how are you finding ways to connect and engage, particularly in an organizational sense. And one of the best ways to do that, particularly when you're working with customers, is to listen to them, is to hear them when they're providing feedback. Now, we've all heard the old adage that feedback is a gift. Sometimes it doesn't quite feel like that. And so it can be hard when we hear feedback that we don't want to hear. But what's amazing for the customer is it doesn't take much of a shift in how that feedback is heard for the customer to feel more valued. I'm going to give you a great example, which happened to me recently. 2 different feedback situations handled totally differently. In the first situation, when I was providing feedback to the waiter, they just looked uncomfortable. They didn't want to hear what I was saying, and they certainly weren't prepared to do anything about it. In the second situation, not only was the person way more receptive, but it was really clear that that organization had a very clear process on how to handle and manage customer feedback. The issues that I was facing were actually quite similar, but the handling of them was at like 2 polar ends of a spectrum. And so my experience, my overall satisfaction, my ability to recommend both organizations totally shifted. In both cases, my needs were actually the same. I just wanted to be acknowledged. I wanted my feedback heard. I was looking for that human-to-human connection. It's the same in so many aspects of our personal and professional lives. You know, if a colleague or a friend or a team member is coming to you with an issue or a complaint or a concern, they're just wanting to feel acknowledged and feel heard. You don't need to fix the issue. Often you can't fix the issue. You may not be able to agree with their perspective. And often it's actually not about agreeing with their perspective. What you need to do, what they need from you, is the acknowledgement. That sense that they know that you've heard and understood their perspective. When you do that, they feel heard. They feel valued. They feel respected. And by taking the time to listen and hear them, and listen with compassion and empathy and real mindfulness, you're showing a genuine interest and a concern in them. And then you're actually giving them exactly what they need. So there's a couple of tips to consider when you're doing this. Firstly, be mindful. Be fully present. Acknowledge that you've heard what they're saying and that this issue matters to them. You can ask clarifying questions so that you're really sure that you've heard what they're saying. And by clarifying and replaying back what you're hearing, you're showing them, you're clearly demonstrating that you are listening, that you're actively listening. You're asking questions with curiosity and wonder and no judgment. And that means you need to watch body language and tone and facial expressions. You're doing this with empathy because you're genuinely seeking to understand. And you're seeking to discover what, if anything, they need from you. But you're not trying to solve the problem for them, because often that's not what they're looking for. And that's accepting that your role is sometimes just to sit with what can feel uncomfortable, to be there and to hear and to listen and to ask them what they need rather than assume that you have all the answers. And the American writer Doug Larson once said, "Wisdom is the reward you get for a lifetime of listening when you'd have preferred to talk." I love those. I think just, wow, what wise words. When you think about it, where are the times that you really need to sit back and listen rather than talk? Take care. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you next week.